let's get to the fun part. Finally actually making handlers where we actually do like database queries and stuff like that. Okay, let's go back to the course site. And basically what we're going to do with the handlers is very similar to what we did with the user handler that we created earlier. So we're going to create a new file inside the handlers folder for every single resource in which we have handlers for, which for us is only 3 more. We have updates, products, and update points. So we're going to make a file for each one of those, and we have to make an accompanying handler for each route that we already created. Right? So for instance, for product, we need a handler for get product by ID, put product by ID, post product, and delete product by ID. So that's 5 handlers for each one of these. So it's 15 handlers we got to make. The good news is, for the most part, they're relatively the same, kind of, but not really. They have the same approach. It's just that the details are going to be slightly different, as you saw when we were going through the inputs. Like, oh, maybe we shouldn't trust this, or maybe we should verify this. So you're never really going to get it right the first time, especially when it comes to relational data and multi-tenancy databases and who has access to what. But it's nice just to get the broad strokes and just to get it out there, and then you can kind of see from there what you need to do. Because even writing these queries, this is going to affect like how you would have to go back and make different indexes in a database, right? Because the index is just an optimization around a query, but if you don't know what queries you're going to write, how do you know what to index? So typically this changes a lot. It just like sends ripples throughout the whole app about things that you might have to change. But like I said, we'll do the broad strokes and we'll mostly get it there. And we could talk about any compromises that we made or things we would have to do in like a fully production environment. Cool. Okay, well, let's do it. So what we're gonna do is we'll start with some of them. We could do product, maybe some of the updates together, and then I'll let you do the rest of them on your own, and you'll have just a lot of context to go off on. Okay, so let's start with product. Go to handlers. We're gonna make a new file here, and we'll call it product.ts, like that. And I'm just gonna export some functions here. I'm gonna create one that says get products, or I'll say get products, I should say, plural. And this will be the one for a get request to /product. This will give you all the products for the signed in user, not every product on the app, because that wouldn't be good. It's a handler, so it takes a request and a response. I'm going to import Prisma from Prisma here from my DB file that I created. It's going to be asynchronous, and now I got to think about what query I need to make in order to get all the products for the user. So let's think about that. Let's look at the schema. If I have a user's ID, how can I get all the products for that user? Well, I know a user has products array on it. That seems like the easiest go-to move. It's already there. And I know product has a belongs to, which is a user. So I could just say, give me all the products where the belongs to ID matches the user. So there's 2 different ways you can do it. I mean, that's just denormalization. It depends on how you want to do it. I don't think there's a right or wrong at this point. I'm probably just going to go with the user since it's already there. So we're inside of a products handler, but we'll be querying the user table. So that might seem weird, but when it comes to getting data from a database and relational databases, sometimes this is basically what denormalization is. Sometimes you have to go a different path to get what you want versus going directly to the thing, because it might not be optimized in that way, which is, again, going back to what I said about writing these handlers sometimes affects how you index things in your database, because the queries can change that. So for now, I'm just gonna go after the users. You can go down to products if you want. You can get the, it doesn't matter how you wanna do it. So I'm just gonna say const, I gotta get the full user because the user that's attached to rec.user is not the full user. That only has the user's ID and the user name, but it doesn't have all the other stuff on the user. So I actually have to query for the user again. So I'll say await Prisma.user.find unique brackets. And then if you're doing a query in Prisma, you have to use a where property. So where, and then what fields you want to filter on. So where ID is rec.user.id. And then outside of the where, I can say include like this, which is an object. And I can say include products, true. And this will ensure that the products are joined. In the case of SQL, it's like it's joining the table. It's making sure the products come in. In the case of Mongo, this would be called a, I haven't used Mongo in a while. There's a word for this in Mongo. Population. This would be a population in Mongo. So it's the equivalent of that. It's just like pull it in and ensure it's there. Okay. So we have that. And then now what we want to do is, and you can even go further. You can say like, oh, include the products. And then for the products, include like, what field does a product have? A name. You can say include a name field on a product if you want, or something like that. So it can get pretty deep, but we're just gonna get the whole product. Okay, so now I can say res.json data. I always like to just send back an object with a data property on it, because if I'm on a client side, like for instance, if I just send back the data without that, if I just set like user.products here, if I just sent that back and I never prefix the data that's coming back from the API, whenever the client gets this data, it's always going to be a different shape. In this case, it's an array. Another thing, it'll be an object, right? So I always just like to, for me, I always just put an object with a data property, and then whatever data that's coming back goes there. And it also allows you to do things like I can send back data. I can also send back errors if I wanted to. I can also send back other things. I don't know what it is, whatever you want to send back. So it's just like saying that's where the data is. And it's just a lot easier to check on the front end when you know that the data is always on that field versus this or that. Yes.
Shouldn't it be product in the include instead of products?
It depends on the schema. Let's see. Your schema might be different. My schema is products. So, but if your schema is singular product, then yeah, it would be. But this is dependent on yours. I pluralized mine because it's an array. So it bothered me not to have it pluralized. That's the sweet thing about Prisma. It'll tell you. So like if I put product, it'll tell me that's not right because it's type checked. So if yours is telling you that it should be product, that's probably because you have product in your schema and not products. All right, so we got that. Let's make another one. So that's to get all the products. Now let's get one product. And I'm gonna just comment these. I'm just gonna say get all. And the reason I'm putting comments here, so when you go look at this, I'm gonna push this up, and when you start working on your own, you'll know what theme to follow for the purpose. Like, oh, I need to do a get all. Okay, it looks something like this. Or I need to do a get one. It looks something like this. So that's what I want to do. Okay, so now for get one, we'll just say export const get one product. That's going to be async. Rec res. How can we get one product? First of all, how do we know what product to get? Anybody want to guess?
With the ID?
Yeah, with the ID. the ID on the URL, the parameter here. We know what product to get is because you should have given us an ID. And if you didn't give us an ID, this route wouldn't have even been triggered and this function wouldn't be running in the first place. It can only run unless you do a GET request to /product/ anything after that, which we're assuming is an ID. So how do we access that? Well, we can get the ID from the request object. So ID would be rec.params.id. Params is the query, or not the query parameter, the route parameter here, and a parameter is just a colon. So that one middleware that we added in the server that's called URL encoded, it's doing that basically. It's turning the parameters to an object for us, and the query string and all that stuff. So we have our ID. So now that we have our ID, we can query the product table or the product collection, if you're using Mongo, to find a product that belongs to the signed in user and has this ID. Right? Because I guess we could just query for the ID, but wouldn't that mean anybody could just send any product ID and we would query for it and send it back? Right? So we have to make sure it's scoped to the signed in user and it's this ID. And if you go look at our schema, we don't have an index for that. We didn't tell our schema, hey, you need to index for a product ID and a combination of a belongs to ID. So this is why I said your queries usually make you go back and change your indexes. So we would have to come here and do something like index, like ID and belongs to ID for this query to work. Well, it'll still work without the index, but if you want it to be optimized, you would have to do that. But that's like advanced database stuff. You probably don't have to concern yourself with that. I'm just trying to give you the pro tips. Okay, anyway, let's do the query. So we can say product equals await Prisma dot product dot find. I guess you could say find first. If we had the index, I guess we could do find unique. Maybe we could still do find unique. Let's see what happens. So we'll say find unique where ID is ID and belongs. Oh yeah, it's not letting me do it. Yeah, we gotta do find first. That's what I thought. So find first, ID is ID, and then belongs to ID is rec.user.id. And we're just gonna send it back. Res.json, data, product. Right now we're being naive intentionally about whether or not the product is there, whether or not it errored out or not. We're gonna handle errors later. But right now, just assume that it always works. There's never gonna be an error and there's never gonna be a problem. So if you're wondering why we're not checking this stuff, is because we will, just not right now. Yes?
What's the difference between find first and find unique?
So find first is, it's more like so you can't, maybe there's some fields where you can't index. For instance, when you're doing like faceting or filtering, like I need to find a combination of certain things that aren't indexed, and there could be many, like maybe I have 100 products and 10 of them have the same name. I want to find the first one that matches this name. Whereas find unique is saying there's only one product ever in the database that has this combination. And it basically just tells Prisma how to write the query differently, right? How you query for multiple things that could be the same versus how you query for something that's guaranteed to be unique is going to be different, because databases treat unique things differently than they treat non-unique things. So ultimately, it's probably just going to come down to speed, but the way you should think about it is there, because we don't have a unique index on this, technically the database is convinced that there might be more than one instance of this combination, So we're saying find the first one of it. But if we index these, this would actually be unique, and we could probably just do find unique and get that optimization from the database of not having to scan the entire collection or the entire table to find our thing. I guess the difference is like saying find first is like loop through an array and find the first thing that matches, whereas like find unique is like go to this object, to this key, and grab me the thing at that key. That's the difference.